Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. The Transport Secretary says the Jabs for Jobs policy is a good idea for companies, but it won't become law. On day 7 at the Tokyo Olympics, British athletes make a breakthrough in BMX racing, winning 1 gold and 1 silver. And China's state-run media threatens the Royal Navy's carrier strike group that it must obey the rules as it sails for the South China Sea. The Transport Secretary says some companies might ask staff to be double jabbed before returning to the office, but it won't become law. It follows reports from the US that Google, Netflix and Facebook may require employees to be fully vaccinated before going back to work. Here's NTD's Jane Well with the details.
Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the Jabs for Jobs policy is a good idea for people, but government won't be legislating it. He says some companies would require both jabs. It comes as reports say tech giants Google, Facebook and Netflix will mandate the vaccines in the US for their employees, though they say some exceptions would be made. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says the government's message is to get the jab. He told Sky News he can understand why employers think it's a smart policy to be fully vaccinated. He says any laws around it would need to be looked at carefully. Do you think that's a smart policy?
Well, it may be a smart policy for certain people to get double jabbed, but it's not a smart policy for employers to insist on it and insist on a COVID passport. It must be people's individual decision after discussion and medical advice. The medical reason why COVID passports are ridiculous is you just have to look at what's happened recently to ministers. The health secretary himself, he was double jabbed, COVID passport, then caught COVID again, and because there was a risk it could be passed on, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor had to self-isolate. So even on their own basis of its value, it doesn't work because they've said you can still catch COVID and you can still pass it on. So the COVID passport tells you nothing at all. The second thing is that it's extremely discriminatory against certain groups in society.
The government faces demands to recall Parliament amid concerns vaccine passports have been introduced by stealth to the NHS app. It now includes a domestic section. Liberal Democrat Alistair Carmichael said Parliament must be recalled to discuss the measure. Many Tory MPs are opposed to vaccine passports. A vote is expected after Parliament rises in September. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
The government's plan to adopt vaccine passports has caused serious divisions within the Conservative Party. A senior MP even suggests it could spark the first Tory party split in nearly 200 years. NTD's Jane Well brings us more on this.
The idea of vaccine passports has always been controversial among Conservative MPs, especially the COVID recovery group, who are critical of the government's COVID restrictions. The group's Deputy Chairman Steve Baker told the Sun newspaper earlier this week that the proposal for vaccine passports is outrageous. He said he believes that the government is in terrible danger of splitting the Tory party irretrievably. The group's chairman Mark Harper criticised the government for trying to force university students to get vaccinated. He said on Twitter, "Persuasion is much better than coercion." More than 40 Tory MPs signed a petition launched by privacy rights group Big Brother Watch against COVID status certification. Even the Cabinet is reportedly divided on the issue. The Telegraph reported that the vaccine passports plan for nightclubs was forced through Cabinet, despite a majority of ministers calling for it to be postponed. The Conservative Party appears to be going through internal divisions unseen since the height of the Brexit crisis. It may impact Boris Johnson's political career, but it goes beyond that. The issue of vaccine passports is so divisive for the Tories because it has serious implications for civil liberties, which is central to the party's founding principles. Jane Werrell, NTD News, Westminster.
Official figures show fewer people are providing their close contacts details after testing positive and being contacted by the NHS. This comes as numbers told to isolate reach record highs. NTD's Trevor Piper has the story.
Official figures show an increasing number of people testing positive for the CCP virus are not giving details of their close contacts to NHS Test and Trace. This comes as a record number of people are forced to isolate. Among the people who were contacted by Test and Trace from July the 15th to the 21st, nearly 77% provided details of their close contacts. This represents a significant drop from the end of May, when 86% provided their contact details. Despite the drop in contact details, other figures increased. Statistics from Department of Health show over 295,000 cases were transferred to the Test and Trace system. This is an increase of 32% on the previous week, the highest number since mid-January. Nearly 308,000 people tested positive, 18% higher than the previous week. As the number of positive cases was high, the number of close contacts also increased by 26%. Nearly 600,000 people were identified as recent close contacts. This comes as nearly 700,000 people were forced to isolate after being pinged by the NHS COVID app. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
China's state-run media threatens Royal Navy's carrier strike group, saying it must obey the rules as it sails for the South China Sea. Beijing claims the waters despite an international court ruling the contrary. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the details.
China's state-run newspaper Global Times published an editorial after the Royal Navy's Carrier Strike Group, or CSG, entered the South China Sea on Sunday. The editorial threatens stern action against the CSG if it does not obey the rules. It suggested Beijing would make an example out of Britain, using the phrase, "To execute one is a warning to 100. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace set the scene earlier this month for a confrontation with Beijing when he said the CSG would sail on any route allowed under international law. A Ministry of Defence spokesperson told NTD the Carrier Strike Group is lawfully navigating the South China Sea, just as 1/3 of global shipping does on an annual basis. The spokesperson said UK forces are not going to the other side of the world to be provocative. The Chinese regime has grown increasingly assertive as it builds military bases and airport runways on constructed islands in the South China Sea. This is despite an international court ruling in 2016 that the area does not belong to China. I spoke with a researcher at the Henry Jackson Society who follows developments in the South China Sea closely.
What's your opinion of China's warning in relation to the CSG appears to be travelling through international waters in a peaceful manner?
Well, Britain are quite right to travel through these international waters, and I think what we see from China is a lot of hot air. Britain isn't the first liberal democracy to conduct freedom of navigation operations through the South China Sea, and it certainly won't be the last one. And Britain carried out a similar sort of move back in 2018, and admittedly the Chinese Navy trailed our vessels, and I suspect they'll do something similar, but the kind of hyperbolic rhetoric coming from Beijing, I think, is bluff, designed to deter future operations and to appeal to a domestic audience.
I asked him to explain more about appealing to a domestic audience.
Well, the Chinese Communist Party lacks legitimacy. We all know that. The people of China do not vote for them and cannot remove them. Therefore, they've had to rely on delivering the economic goods and fanning the flames of Chinese nationalism in order to justify their rule.
The tensions come after Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said he had discussed the CSG route with his Chinese counterpart, and the deployment was being done in a confident but not confrontational way. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
Moving on to what we might see more of lighting up our skies. In the 15th century, when Henry VII saw the first British fireworks display, he may not have expected them to still be around half a millennium later. But could fireworks have finally met their match? NTD's Joy Duguid has the story.
They light up the night sky in beautiful formations. They featured in the Tokyo Olympics opening ceremony. No, this is not fireworks, it's drones. John Hopkins co-founded British drone display company Celestial. He says technology is developing so fast, fireworks may soon be replaced with high-quality flying images.
We love fireworks, but they blow things up, they're single use, they make things catch on fire and they scare animals. So what we're trying to do is create something creatively more interesting, green because we use renewable energy sources, and we don't scare the animals.
Celestial flies as many as 300 drones in formations such as robot, dancer, butterfly and inverted pyramid.
And what we like to think of what we're doing here at Celestial is marrying technology with soul. We want to inject organic movement and human spirit into these drones and into this technology.
But behind every perfect formation is an enormous amount of preparation work.
So every drone needs to be laid out, the batteries need to be put in, everything needs to be checked, and each drone needs to be calibrated, which means you've got to kind of pick it up and move it around because they've all got little accelerometers inside that need to be kind of calibrated for a safe flight.
The companies say they are now working on the live control of displays, allowing an artist or drone DJ to play the swarm in time with music as they fly. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
Still to come, flood victims in Belgium are suffering from nightmares and panic attacks. A psychologist says the trauma will stay with them forever. That and more after the break. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.